It's looking pretty ugly. This one doesn't look so good because it's covered in powdery mildew. You want to talk about ugly? You see it right there? That's a slug. Well, not everything is ugly in October. Guten yardening, everybody. It's hard for me to believe, but we're almost halfway through October here in Zone 5, Wisconsin, and that means that a lot of our gardening here, outdoors anyway, is coming to an end. It's almost hard to believe that this area that was so full of life just a couple of short weeks ago now looks so barren. I mean, we still have a few green tomatoes on the vines here, but for the most part, we've already brought in most everything that we had left out here to harvest. I mean, there are a few things still on the vine, and I'll show you that as a part of our tour today, but a lot of what we had out here is already gone. But it is so interesting to see as we wrap up this season, this summer season, and now wrapping up our fall season, some of the vegetables that have maintained, even through the couple of days that we've already had with temperatures around 31 or 32 degrees Fahrenheit. I still love getting some of these tomatoes out here this late in the season. But to me, it is really interesting to see the difference that just a few weeks makes. Those colder temperatures stop the growing process. And I mean, this is real. This is what every gardener has to face if you live in one of the colder zones like we do here in Zone 5, where you're going to see that empty beds. You're going to see the loss of production that you were having early on in the season. And we're at a point now where some of the vegetables that we have out here, like this okra, is no longer a vegetable that we're bringing in for eating. Instead, we're just leaving it out here to the point where we can collect some seeds off of it. But at the same time, we still have some harvesting that we have to do. These are our sweet potatoes growing in our green stalk here in our front yard and space, and you can see that these have to come out. Those cold temperatures, those 30, 31, 32 degree temperatures outside can create problems for the sweet potatoes themselves inside. So now it's about making time to harvest the last things that we absolutely need to harvest. Well, this has to be harvested very soon. Now, we already grew sweet potatoes indoors in a green stalk, and I'm really anticipating seeing how well it performed outdoors instead. You know, I think it's really important that everyone who's out here gardening has the opportunity to understand that no matter how much time and effort we emphasize and focus in on our gardens, we all get to this point if we're in these cooler growing zones where our plants start to die back. Look at that. That's the beginnings of a head of cabbage. We'll see what happens there. But our plants start to die back, and so it's not that pretty July, pretty August colors filled with all these fruits and vegetables. This is the real deal. And it's so funny because I've always loved the colors of the trees in the fall. And for most of my life, fall has been my absolute favorite season. But it's a little bit tougher when you're a gardener and you have to see your plants dying back. You might even say that all the greenery, the lush greenery you have has become a bit ugly. Take a look at our grapes now exposed as these leaves start to die back and wilt. We've still got a good number of grapes on here. And this has been an interesting season for grapes for us. For whatever reason, and I think the main reason was the damage that rabbits did last season, we barely had any grape harvest. And this year we're mid-October and we still got some grapes on the vine. Look at the color our peach leaves are turning. That vibrant yellow. So all these leaves are going to disappear, and then we're going to see the height of this massive peach tree. You know what? It provided us with 3 peaches. Well, it provided the squirrels with 3 peaches this year. I think next year is going to be a great year for this tree. All right, I'm on the western side of our house now, and I'm going to show you something that you don't know yet. Do you remember this massive sweet potato bed that we have 32 feet long? Well, here's what it looks like now. It's empty. There's all this soil piled up on top, and over here we have all of the vines from our sweet potatoes. So you know what that means? That means we harvested the sweet potatoes out of here. So you're gonna have to stay tuned to see how that harvest went. I'm gonna tell you something. I think you're gonna really enjoy that video. I know I enjoyed harvesting. You know, that payoff after 119 days of waiting for that bed to see what was inside, that was worth it. I get it. It's empty now. It's barren, but it was a fun time to be out here. A fun couple of hours. Now, I know I said some things out here are looking a little bit ugly. You're gonna see that with our tomato plants for sure. But what's interesting is this little bed right here is right underneath the exhaust from our dryer. So whereas the things right on the other side of the bed had experienced a lot of wilting due to the cold, look at this summer squash. Now the leaves of this one are getting some powdery mildew on it, and honestly I don't anticipate any more or much more development on here. We've already gotten 1 or 2 squash there, and this one doesn't look so good because it's covered in powdery mildew, but these are still alive. Look at this. Look at this baby right here. See all the little baby squash on there? Mid-October? Well, we're gonna have some cold weather before they develop fully, but that's pretty cool. You know, in the past, we've talked about doing a video on pruning grapes. This is another one of our grapes that produced really well this year. It's looking pretty ugly. Actually, look, there are a couple of tiny grapes left on here. That's so cool. But if that's something you'd like to see, a video on how we're gonna be pruning our grapes, let us know in the comments. Hey, these are tiny, but they're really sweet. I'd like some more of those next year for sure. I absolutely love the early part of the season when our black currants, our pink champagne currants, and our gooseberries are in full production. Right now, the leaves of these plants are dying off. In fact, it's going to lose all of its foliage this winter. But this is something to look forward to for next season. Remember, these plants, the gooseberry in particular, these are early producers for us. And so we're going to have those before we have any of our grapes. Look at this mountain of a grape plant here. Again, if you're interested in seeing us do some video on how we prune back our grapes, let us know in the comments. We'll see what we can do. So much emptiness out here. You know what's interesting as we make our way around to our backyard and space, we've done some content on this before where we talked about clearing out our garden for the winter. And you know, there have been lots of suggestions as to whether or not we should actually be pulling all of this stuff up, pulling it out of the ground. We don't till. This was not a bed that was tilled. Actually, we didn't till any beds this year at all. But whether or not we should leave this out here for the critters to have a home in over the winter. And so I'd love to get your thoughts on this. What is it that you do with your garden? Do you just leave it out and then deal with everything come spring? Or do you take everything and pull it up to clean out your garden completely? Let us know that in the comments. I think I missed one of our greenies here. Yeah, that's pretty nice looking. Look at that inside. See, there are a couple other black cherry tomatoes on here and a couple more right here. Now I said in a recent harvest tour video that the next time that I came out here and didn't eat one of these ripe black cherry tomatoes would be the first time. And this is not going to be that first time. So good. You know, I have to say this end of the garden, this is the westernmost end of our back garden, has to be the area that looks the most vibrant and full of life with all these color greens in here. They're still massive. You can't see any kind of ill effect from the cold weather, and that's one of the benefits of a lot of these brassicas. They stand up to that cool weather a lot better. And I really got to get in here and get the seed pods for our asparagus picked off so we can collect some of those seeds. You see this green one right here? That one's not quite ready, but the orangish red one is. Check out our video on asparagus seeds so you can see how to preserve those and how to collect them. Look at the contrast here. This dead tomato plant, for the most part, all died back, and then some of these beautiful cherry tomatoes. Isn't that cool? You can find all this around here just dying back left and right. Look at these beans on here. This is another one of those plants that we've left some of the beans on here. These are ready. I could bring these in now. They're nice and dried out to harvest some of those seeds. Wow. For next season. Now, I've talked about these berries before. We're right at the back of our house right now. I've talked about these fall-bearing raspberries. These are our golden raspberries. But I think it's important to know just how long they can produce for, because one of the things we talk about is that the fall-bearing raspberry lasts a lot longer, has that second season or second harvest during the same growing season. But I think until you see, here we go, there's a ripe one right there, just really what that looks like in practice. Again, mid-October, Zone 5, Wisconsin. A large number of these we've already picked off. But the fact that there's still more coming in now should tell you just how valuable this type of raspberry is. Look at this. Doesn't that look amazing? I cannot, for the life of me, get rid of this strawberry spinach. It doesn't matter what I do. This stuff is insane. It just won't leave us alone no matter what. There's so many seeds in here. For as plenteous as it is, I really wish the taste was a little bit better. It's not horrible, but come on. This stuff has grown everywhere. Have you had experience growing strawberry spinach? Let us know in the comments. If you found a way to get rid of strawberry spinach once you did grow it, let us know that in the comments. I think it's important to be very, very realistic about what your garden's going to look like right now. One of the things that we've talked about, and we're going to have a video on this a little bit later, is that not everything has gone perfectly well for us this season. We've had our garden failures for sure. And to be quite honest, I think if all we did was to spend time focusing on all the things that worked well, that would just be unrealistic. It really would be. So as I said earlier, I think it's important to see kind of the other side of what we have out here. Because if we don't recognize this, that not everything's going to be perfect, what you do is you start to become disillusioned, you start to become disappointed in your production. And really, how is that fair? We're trying to encourage people to grow more. We want you to understand to expect some failures. We want you to understand that your garden's not going to always be perfect and beautiful, neat rows everywhere. You know, we planted a half a dozen of these purple cabbage. This is the first one, and now the second one right down here that I'm harvesting. You see the size of this? That's a nice tight head, but that's not big. Some of our cabbage look great. This didn't make it that far. It's still gonna make a good meal. I wanna show you something else. You wanna talk about ugly? You see it right there? That's a slug. It's one of the things you have to deal with cabbage. Sometimes they can come along and eat just about everything. Hey, listen, when you're growing your own food, here's the other one I was talking about. Not that big. When you're growing your own food, you have to remember you're gonna actually see the pests and the bugs and the stuff like that you're gonna get on your food. It's not gonna be like at the grocery store where hopefully all of that is gone. And everything may not be perfect. Look, there's a little hole in there. But don't let that turn you off to what you're doing, which is producing food like this kale right here for your entire family to enjoy. See these beautiful kale plants? These are gonna last us for months longer, even while everything around it is dying. You know what? I didn't think we were gonna get this to grow any bigger. This is the one that I left behind during my last harvest out here. That 140-pound harvest. Yeah, and actually, you can see right here, I'll pull it off. There's no point to it. It's kind of squishy and soggy because that cold weather that came along and beat up the rest of these plants. Well, that's what happens. Although this one, hey, that one's nice. Hey, bonus vegetable right here. There you go. That's what a little frost will do to your plants, especially your summer squash. All right, I've got the Heritage Red Raspberries behind me. I have to say this one more time because I'm not sure if even I believe this. It's mid-October right now. Let me show you what's still on these red raspberry plants. I've probably got on these canes, at the ends of these canes, these are our prima canes, our first year canes. That's why we're getting that growth at the end. Look at this. I've got a pound plus of raspberries that I could come out here and harvest off of these. If you know how to take care of your raspberries, they're gonna take care of you. We got a couple of videos on how to prune these back. I highly recommend. Check out the fall bearing varieties. I love our summer bearing. I love the taste of those black raspberries, but check out that fall bearing variety. You see what I mean? That's well over a pound. Well, these container sweet potatoes need to be dug up as well. We are well into that point where they're no longer growing. You want a sneak peek? You want to see? No, I'm not gonna do that for you. We're gonna have those harvested soon. We've actually got quite a few containers of those. This is our Okinawan sweet potato, the one that's white on the outside and purplish color on the inside. Oh, I can't wait. Cannot wait. Do you remember this? It looks like a mess right now. That's just because I got to rewrap it and bring up all this really good stuff. See this hay? See how well it decomposed? This is where we just harvested some of our sweet potatoes, and earlier in the season we harvested some potatoes from this DIY vertical garden. I've got that video coming your way shortly too. You know, I got to a point where I was questioning whether or not we should be doing another garden tour now in the middle of October, because a lot of people have already put their gardens to bed. I'm guessing especially in zone 4 and zone 5, you're already to a point where you might not be growing anymore. But for those of us who have a fall garden, which things like these carrots that we have growing in here are a part of, we're trying to squeeze every last second out of our ability to harvest. Take a look at this. We let this heritage red raspberry cane develop over here. You see how far it's extended from its parent plant? Well, that's all right. We're going to dig that up later on. Well, the cold hit the top of this green stalk where we had our eggplant, but take a look a little bit farther down. The peppers are pretty much done as well, but our spinach looking nice still in here. That's the deal. A little something on this leaf. But for the most part, this spinach is still looking pretty nice. And it's tasty too. Well, some experiments go really well. The bed behind me right here is where we pulled our purple stoked sweet potatoes out of here. Over 20 pounds from one single sweet potato. So you definitely want to check that video out. But some experiments, well, they're experiments for a reason. We planted some tomatoes in here as a fall planting, and they didn't really have enough time to produce a lot, but there are still some green tomatoes in here that we can get inside. So it wasn't a complete loss. These were extra tomato plants that we had lying around that, we could have thrown out, or we could gather, and we kind of figured they wouldn't get all the way to maturity, but we can gather these green tomatoes inside, have a little bit of a harvest still. The other cool thing about coming out here and seeing these empty beds is I get to sit here and remember all the harvest. This was our experimental harvest where we had a store-bought versus a certified Yukon Gold set of potatoes. That was a fun experiment. And I get to plan for what these harvests, these are some more of our container sweet potatoes, what these harvests are going to look like. And of course, as I keep mentioning, they have to be done in a pretty rapid fashion. I don't know why I think this is funny, but right behind me, this bed is where we grew some potatoes in compost. But see all of this? This is growing from some old seed potatoes that we didn't need anymore. We just threw on top, and it started to grow again. Now there's very little time here. There's no way, I think, that these are going to perform. And speaking of things that want to grow, you see this 6-foot tall cherry tomato plant that still looks really nice? Look at that. It's almost up to the roof of our garage here. We never planted it. Look down here. It's growing out of these little containers in here. We gathered it up. It was a volunteer. We kept it in this container and never got around to planting it. And it's still up here producing. And you know what it is? That's a black cherry tomato. Someone asked me earlier today if I could live anywhere, where would I want to live? And the only thing I requested was an area where I had maybe another 20 or 30 days of a growing season. I'd love to have that. But we will grow as much as we can with what we've got. See these long raised beds? We're now in the eastern part of the house where we grew a ton of tomatoes this season. These were some monsters in here. And now we've got to come back through and get these sweet potatoes out of here as well. I'll take a look at this. This was not ripe the last time I was in here. Oh, I want to drop it. This is an Azoichka tomato. That's one additional blessing for our family. There's another green one right there. We've got to get inside too. And our patio garden is looking worse for the wear for sure, but there are still a few things in here we need to harvest. These are our fall potatoes that we planted. We didn't give them a lot of time, about 70 days maximum, and they died a little bit faster than that, but we'll see if anything grew inside here. We have quite a few of these bags. All right, you know what? This one I will give you just a little preview. Oh, I had myself scared for a second. But then they popped up. Extra potato plants, extra seed potatoes lying around. Get some fall potatoes. All right, that's the only one I'm going to show you. You got to stay tuned for another harvest if you want to see the rest of these. Look at those purple beauties. These are those purple magic molly potatoes. Well, I don't usually give sneak peeks like that, so if you're one of the lucky people who just got to see me do that, leave a comment down below and say, I'm one of the lucky ones. Well, up until the point where I can say this was so beautiful and so productive for us, I would say now it's pretty ugly. And yet, look at this borage that we definitely didn't plant here. That stuff self-seeds like crazy. It's a good thing that's so delicious. But take a look at what this was before and think about the potential for next season as well, as we're looking into the areas of this garden that have already died back. That is excitement building right there. Well, this was our DIY vertical garden with the black plastic on the outside. You can see it's empty as well. It's going to be part of that harvest video. And check this out. These are our first ever lemons that have made it to maturity. They're actually yellow. Before they stopped when they were green. Look at those. And on this plant, a whole lot more growing. But that's for another video. You know what else is for another video? These mandarin oranges that are coming back. See all the blossoms on here? We're hoping that, and we've still seen quite a few bees around here, we're hoping that we can get this nice and pollinated before we take it inside. Now, I don't mind pollinating these plants at all. In fact, that's something that we have to do for some of ours when we're growing indoors. And we have a ton of growing ahead of us indoors this winter. But if the bees can do the job for us, that's definitely all the better. I think we're down to some of the last stragglers with peppers as well. That one's not gonna get any riper, so we'll harvest this. We've got another one right over here. These are our container peppers along with our container kohlrabi. Look at that, about 2 inches wide. Some more peppers, some nice California Wonder right here. Ooh, some bell peppers in here. I love it. Now for a video called Ugly, I'm sitting in front of a pretty nice end shot, don't you think? These beautiful marigolds out here. And on top of that, we still got to get these radishes harvested out of this garbage can lid that we've modified into a planter. Take a look at those. That's pretty nice, huh? My daughters are actually going to harvest these. But I want to make this very clear to you. It's going to get ugly in your garden before it gets prettier, especially if you're growing in these colder growing zones like ours in zone 5. And there's nothing in the world wrong with that. You come to expect that piece, and that just helps to build the anticipation for the upcoming gardening season. Now, if you're still gardening in one of these cooler growing zones, let us know what you still have growing in your fall garden. We'd love to hear about that in the comments. Well, we hope you enjoyed this late fall garden tour. Tell you, it's not all pretty, but it's still pretty nice to be able to be out here and enjoy what we're growing. If you enjoyed today's video, please don't forget to give us a like, leave us a comment, remember to share and subscribe, and most importantly, remember, when you're with us, you are good to grow.